Everybody. Welcome to the second edition of Cardinal Dash. I'm King Jimison alongside Daniel Martinez Krams, your resident biology major. You all love him. Maybe some of you hate him. And we are here to discuss some Stanford sports today. And go out and follow Dash Sports TV on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We got great coverage for all of the Pac-12 schools. And today we're going to extend it a little bit beyond Stanford football. We'll start with Stanford football and end up talking about all the Stanford fall sports, including men's and women's soccer and women's volleyball. Daniel, let's get right into it. Talking about Stanford football, what do you see as Stanford's strength and Stanford's weakness, or at least their biggest strength, their biggest weakness in a potential Pac-12 spring season?
Right now, the biggest strength is pretty clear, and I think we all know what that is. It's the passing game, and it's really not even close. Last year, Stanford had an awful year. Bottom of the Pac-12 in nearly anything. Somehow they managed to get fifth in the receiving. And they're returning a lot of that talent. They're returning Connor Weddington, Michael Wilson, Osiris St. Brown, Simi Fehoko, who not only set a school record for yards per catch, 23.6, but was making big plays down the field all the time. You have some great recruits, some people down the line. Bryson Tremaine caught 3 balls, all for touchdowns. Passing game is what they're going to have to lean on. And with Davis Mills leading the offense, they're going to have to lean on that all year long.
You know what? I love to disagree with you. It's kind of my goal in life is to disagree with Daniel, but I'm going to have a trouble disagreeing with you on this one because it is pretty clear that the wide receiver room is the strongest position group, at least on paper, coming into the season for Stanford. And I think you highlighted it with Simi Fehoko. I think Michael Wilson and Simi Fehoko is as good a 1-2 punch as we may see in the Pac-12, sans USC perhaps, because you got Wilson, who's a very reliable target, had 10 catches against Notre Dame at the end of the season, and then you complement that with your big play threat in Fehoko, and it's not just those guys. I mean, I think we're also going to see more from Connor Weddington. He's an all-purpose threat. You know, we may even see him line up at running back a little bit this season, but I'd love to see him get the ball more often on fly sweeps, little bubble screens, any way to get the ball in his hands because he's a playmaker. And I am really excited about John Humphreys, hearing great things about him, a big-time recruit and a guy that the people in the know in SoCal are saying he's even better than the recruiting ranking sites seem to place him at. I mean, he's 6'5", so yet another big guy for David Shaw to throw fades to in the end zone. I mean, there's nothing that David Shaw and Tavita Pritchard love more than throwing 4 straight fades. So I think we're going to get more of that. And very importantly, let's talk a little bit about this element of the passing game. I think that Davis Mills is going to have plenty of time because I'm a believer in the offensive line this year. I mean, you've got a lot of young talent that was pushed into action last season with the ridiculous number of injuries. I mean, it was basically all we were writing about at one point was how is the offensive line this injured? Well, now those guys, the one bright side is they got some experience last year. And assuming Walker Little plays, you've got maybe the best offensive lineman in college football anchoring that thing on at left tackle. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about the offensive line otherwise?
Yeah, I think in the passing game, we're going to see a lot of improvement from the offensive line, especially if Walker Little plays, Foster Sproul on their side, potentially Drew Dahlman, who is a Pac-12, all preseason Pac-12 nod. That's a really strong group to start with all that freshmen. But the craziest thing is they're returning 82% of their offensive line starts, but probably fewer of those guys are actually going to start because we don't expect Walter Rouse necessarily to start every game. He was a very, very good option there last year, but probably is going to have to move to left guard this year. But now we're starting to see some improvement, right? We're not starting a new front five every game. We're not putting in freshmen that have never seen field action against Walter Rouse that made his first start in the Coliseum week 2. That's crazy. That's how the line was all year. So I think in the passing game, we're going to see much, much improvement. And that's going to give Davis Mills what he needs to really go downfield because they're going to start making big plays. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And they're also a lot more dump off plays. They want to get even the running backs involved in the passing game because right now the run game is slow. It's not going to be what we've seen in the past from Christian McCaffrey and Bryce Love when he was healthy. It's going to be a much different run game. And I think Austin Jones is going to be a guy. I think he's going to be someone they're going to lean on in the run game. I think he is the best running back in that room. See how much they use him because they do like to divvy up their carries. I still think the benefit or the strength of this offense is the passing game. but what the running game can give us is going to tell us a lot about what this team's peak is.
Man, you got me excited when you started talking about Walter Rouse. I love that guy. He's so high energy, such a nice guy. And the fact that he performed as well as he did, coming in as a three-star recruit, having to make your first start in the Coliseum, and eventually having to play on an offensive line that had 6 guys available, that guy, he has it. Even if he is on the second unit, I think they're going to find ways to get him on the field as much as possible. And I think in the running game, I think that's a sneaky strength for Stanford this season, potentially, because we just talked about it. We believe in the offensive line. I think my biggest worry is whether or not Walker Little will opt out in the spring season, because he's a first-round guy almost no matter what. He doesn't have much to gain from playing this year. But I'm a big believer in Austin Jones and Nathaniel Pete. I think both of them showed a lot of promise last season. Both were, near top 100 recruits in the previous year. And I think, both were kind of in Cameron Scarlett's shadow last year. Because he was the 5th-year guy. It was his turn, very reliable. I get why he got most of the carries, but there's a lot more upside in Pete and Jones. I think you're going to see more big plays. They're not Bryce Love, and hopefully we're about to see Bryce Love on Sundays again. But I do think you're going to see a much more productive Stanford offense than last season. But, I'm a bright side guy. There's a lot of bad in this world going on right now. I just want to talk about the good. I'm afraid we can't, though, Daniel. We got to talk about weaknesses. What do you see as Stanford's biggest weakness this season?
Well, it's probably the same thing it was last season, linebacker. They were decimated by injuries last year, and I don't know how much better it's going to get this year. I really don't. I would hope that it would. I really hope that it would. Jordan Fox has a lot of potential. Gabe Reed, maybe. Jacob Mingham-Farrar and Ricky Maison, if healthy, can do a lot. But do we really believe that they're going to be healthy? Do we believe that they've made that much progress since we've seen them on the field last? I don't know. I really don't know. I trust Curtis Robinson. I think he's one of the better guys they got there. But linebacker is probably the weakness of the defense right now, weakness of the team right now. And if we look at what Stanford's done historically, that's what they need. And I think that's really going to hamper what they're able to do.
Here's the scary thing. I think you could take any defensive position group and say it's a weakness right now. Particularly if you remove Paulson Adebo from the secondary. And once again, similar position to Walker Little in that he doesn't have a lot of incentive to play. He's almost certainly a top 2-round guy, likely first-round pick, regardless of what he does this season. So you worry that a guy like that will choose to opt out, and of course would support him in that decision as well. But the rest of the secondary, a bit sketchy. I think Caillou Blue Kelly was good last season. Jonathan McGill was good last season. Malik Antoine was good last season, but none of these guys are top level. And Stanford's passing defense was one of the worst in the country last season, 121st nationally in yards per game allowed. And it's not like the Pac-12 had a bunch of Heisman Trophy contenders at quarterback. So I do think that problem with the secondary is actually more the fault of the linebackers and particularly the defensive line for not being able to generate pressure on the quarterback. And actually, that's where I'm going to go for my biggest weakness is the defensive line. Don't think we know enough right now. I mean, you're returning, by my count, a total of 14 sacks. You're losing a lot with the loss of Casey Toohill. He was pretty clearly your best pass rusher last season. We need to see more from Thomas Booker. We need to see more from Dalen Wade-Perry. We need to see more from a lot of these guys. I think Stephen Herron has a lot of promise. Gabe Reed has a lot of promise. But as of yet, they don't have that production to point to. And so I worry that this is going to be another year in which Stanford can't get any pressure on the quarterback and thus will be once again among the bottom teams in the country in passing defense. So, I got to say, I don't think Stanford's offense is a world beater. I think that they're going to be a good offense. I worry that their defense is going to be downright terrible. And I'm afraid that equation does not mean lots of wins for the Cardinal. And
I think what we worry about here is that is Stanford comfortable being a score-first team? Are they comfortable saying we're going to outscore the other opponent as opposed to we're going to score? You know what I'm trying to say, right? Because all this whole time, Stanford's been we're just gonna hold them. We're just gonna hold them. It's gonna be defense first. We're gonna run the ball. We're gonna control the clock. We don't see that right now. We're done. We need Davis Mills to throw. I think everyone thinks this entire season hinges on Davis Mills, and then on the defense, they're not gonna be the elite that they once were. And it goes back to the pressure. It goes back to all of that. Yeah, I'm with you.
I think David Shaw is going to take that loss up at Washington State, in which Davis Mills threw for a school record in passing yards, over 500 yards, and yet Stanford still got blown out. I think that was the biggest confirmation bias event of all time in David Shaw's mind. He's like, see, I told you guys, if we actually throw the ball and try to get in a shootout, we're going to lose. This is not the Stanford way. And I think that was the worst thing possible that could have happened to Stanford. At that point, Stanford was still fighting for bowl eligibility, and he just said, light it up, Davis. I don't think it mattered what Stanford did offensively. They were going to give up a lot of points. But that was disappointing to see. And I think the truth is that kind of game and like the kind of game Stanford won against Arizona earlier that season, that's how Stanford's going to have to win this season. I don't see the defense being any more than mediocre. So if Stanford's going to improve to a, say, above 500 team in a conference-only schedule, it's going to absolutely have to be on the offense to put up a ton of points. And so let's transition to that right now. Daniel, let's talk a little bit about Stanford's potential record this season. Very hard to project things because we still don't know the exact schedule. We don't even know if there's going to be a season. But, because we're trying to be optimistic, we're trying to provide good vibes to this world today. Let's act like there is going to be a season. Let's act like it's going to be a 10-game conference-only Pac-12 schedule. And we have a copy of what that schedule would have been in the fall, so we can assume that's going to be the same home-road split. What do you think is a reasonable over-under in that 10-game scenario for Stanford this season?
Right. And I'm going to go on the optimistic side because we're trying to do good vibes today. I really appreciate that. That's what we all need right now. California's battling fires, all this problems and the pandemic. We need good. I'm saying there's 8 winnable games on the schedule, 8 winnable games. I don't know if they're going to get there, but you know what? I'm going to say 7-3. I'm going to be bullish. David Shaw's got all this time to figure it out. He's going to have a game plan of the century. He's going to have a menu card. He's going to be calling plays left and right. You've never seen it before. Stanford, 7-3 this year. Book it right now.
Daniel, clearly the biology lab has gotten in your head. You've gone crazy. I don't know what type of chemicals you've been working around, but they're not working because that's insane. Are you telling me that the 4-8 team last season that lost the axe against Cal, they got blown out at home by UCLA, that was 5th in the Pac-12 North, only got 3 Pac-12 wins, 3 in 9 chances. You think that same team's going to come out and go 7-3 in a spring season when I would predict that Stanford will probably be more affected than other schools by potential opt-outs because of A, having NFL draft quality guys, and B, just being in a certain scenario. Let's just say Stanford guys are built differently. It's not all about football. I think you may see potentially more opt-outs. That's that part of the question. Regardless, I still think you're crazy to say anything close to 7-3. Yes, there may technically be 8 winnable games, but I would counter that by saying there's probably at least 7 to 8 losable games. And honestly, there's not a single guaranteed win on this schedule. Oregon State at home, feel pretty good about that one. Colorado at home, feel pretty good about that one. Arizona at home, feel pretty good about that one. The rest, when you're talking about home against Washington State, I like that. Those are the 4 wins that I'm like, I think Stanford can get. And so I'll set the over-under at 5 because I think that those 4 they should be able to get. And I'll give them credit for one more. But I'll tell you this right now, Daniel. I would be shocked if Stanford goes on the road and wins at UW. I would be shocked if Stanford goes on the road and beats Cal. I'm afraid the Axe may be living in Justin Wilcox's backyard for a little while. I'm sorry, but I just think they're a better team. I would be even more shocked if Stanford goes up to Oregon, pulls off another upset in Eugene. Oregon should be the best team in the Pac-12. And if it's not them, then it's USC, and Stanford has to play USC at home. USC has a potential Heisman contender at quarterback. I mean, I see all of those as nearly guaranteed losses. And Arizona State on the road, I mean, with what Herm Edwards is starting to build there, I don't see that as a very good situation either. So, I mean, I'm looking at it as optimistically, I can get to maybe 6-4, and that's the optimistic side. I think that they're just as close to 4-6 as they are to that 6-4.
I'm going to bring it back to something you said earlier. You said the same team that went 4-8 last year. This isn't the same team. We saw those injuries. We saw everything that went down last year. I don't think they were putting out their best team. I think we can put a much better team on the field whenever happens in the spring. Am I worried about opt-outs? Yes, sure. I think that'll hurt them at some bit. But they're also bringing in a class of 26 freshmen. And you know what? David Shaw saw last year. A lot of those freshmen can play. And the 2019 class was good, not great. This is another good, not great class, but they have 26 guys they can dip into, plus a lot of people with experience. And oh, wait, they have that 2017 class. Stanford always relies on its seniors, on its upper class guys. And now they're having that great 2017 class that was ranked like 14th nationally. Those are the people that they're going to be relying on. That's going to be Davis Mills, right? So now we're getting those people in the fold game in and game out. There's a lot of possibilities here. Sure, I agree with you that Oregon game is pretty much lost. Same with the USC. But the rest of them? Are you telling me we're going to lose the Cow back-to-back seasons? No, I can't let it happen. Not on my watch. They're not going to do that to me. That would break my heart just a little bit too much. That game came down to the wire. It seemed right at the first possession. Stanford drove right down the field and scored. It looked like it was going to be a blowout going the other way. Cal won at the last second. It wasn't a blowout at all. Those teams are evenly matched, and I think Stanford's going to put out a better team this year. And then the UCLA loss with Jack West? Come on. If we have Davis Mills out on the field again, it's not going to be that same situation as we saw last year. Jack West was under 50% passing in that game. UCLA simply cannot put out the same team, the same circumstances as we saw last year. That was Pac-12 after dark. There's not going to be Pac-12 after dark energy this year. It's just too much going on in spring of 2021. Stanford, 7-3, book it right now.
I mean, you made a very good point that I had not considered. In a spring season, we may eventually be playing in daylight savings time again. We may get that spring forward. There's going to be way less Pac-12 after dark. Please don't check my math on that. I forget whether it gets darker earlier or darker later, whatever. Anyway, games in March. Do I think David Shaw, with the way that, I mean, he approaches all 365 or 366 days of the year the exact same way, do I think that he might have his team better prepared mentally for that kind of environment with no fans, which Stanford already plays in front of no fans? Yes, I agree with you that I think a spring season, anything is possible. We really don't know what we're going to see from any of these teams. And, you know, in terms of NFL draft opt-outs, I think that other programs like Oregon and USC will probably be hit harder. I just, you know, Stanford's culture may well be broken. I think that this season, if it had happened in the fall at least, where we could make more of a normal analysis of the season, would have been a bit of a referendum on the David Shaw era. He's been the best coach in Stanford history. There's no denying that. But the question is this sustainable? Is this something he can keep up as the rest of the Pac-12 starts to move in a different direction, as college football starts to move in a different direction? Is it possible to run his type of sets and still win games at the highest level? Oregon's starting to do it, but they're doing it by recruiting at the very highest level at the offensive line positions and generating just great skill position talent and absolutely dirty defenses that are going to make you work for everything. Stanford doesn't have those things. What Stanford has is like basically every other Pac-12 and Big 12 school out there, a good quarterback and good wide receivers. And yeah, you're going to beat some people doing that, and you're also going to lose some people doing that, and you're probably going to be in a shootout every single week. Shootouts lead, you know, the shootout-prone teams go 5-5 a lot more often than they go 7-3. It's just the way the math works out when you start looking at 48, 43 games. One week, Chase Garbers doesn't run it in. The next week he does. And those kind of toss-up games it's really going to be hard to go better than 500. And I agree with you that this should be, on paper, a better roster if they can avoid the type of injuries that they've had. But I just can't get over the way we saw Stanford finish last season, the way we saw Stanford lay some just terrible eggs last season, and not think that when you have no gimme games, you don't have a William & Mary on the schedule this season, you don't have a BYU on the schedule this season, you know, what are you going to do? There's not going to be a single week to maybe take a break. Obviously, I hope they build in buys, but in a spring season, may just be 10 games straight through. I just have a lot of trouble believing that Stanford is going to improve to the fact that they can get anywhere close to your 7-3 mark. But this is one where I hope you're right. I really, really hope you're right, because I want to see Stanford get back to its winning ways. It's my senior year. Please, can we get a April Rose Bowl appearance?
That sounds phenomenal to me. I would love that. I think there's a possibility. I think there's a chance. We're going to bank on that chance right now. And you know what? Things are going to be crazy. And I do trust David Shaw in that aspect. I really do think he's going to prepare them for a season with all of its quirks. I think that is where his expertise can really lie, because he is the best coach in Stanford history. And I think we'll see a little bit of that play out, because I think Stanford's style still can work. I don't know exactly what their style is right now. I don't know if it is that intellectual brutality anymore. But I think whatever we see in the spring, that's going to be kind of what they move towards, because they have had all this time to review tape, to go over things. And I think what we see then is going to be what we see in the future.
I hope so. And I like what I've seen, just social media and public comments by both Coach Shaw and the rest of the team. They seem to be locked in for a spring season. That's a great sign. I think they want to play football whenever they're allowed to play. They very much respect the Pac-12 decision, agree with that decision. That kind of focus can go a long way. But let's talk about some other sports that have had their season postponed and altered. And you know what? Let's not just call them the other sports, Daniel. You and I believe that Stanford sports is about the entire athletic department. It's not just about football and men's basketball, not even just about football, men's basketball, and women's basketball. But you and I both cover men's and women's soccer and women's volleyball very closely. Those are the other fall sports that reported were ready to go for a 2020 season. Now have seen that season move to the spring, with hopes that there will be an NCAA championship, because there will be no NCAA championship in the fall. Hopefully everybody will join the Pac-12 and play in the spring. So let's talk a little bit about each of those teams. I'm going to let you get it started off with men's and women's soccer. Women's soccer coming off a national championship in dramatic fashion. Katie Meyer became a social media legend. And I think, we can expect to see even more from her. And you have professional level talent all over the field. Men's soccer made it to the semifinals as well last year with a lot of talent returning. Tell us about those two programs.
I'm going to start with women's soccer, because I truly believe they are the best team in collegiate sports. Any sport, women's soccer. Just going to put that out there. Head coach Paul Ratcliffe has a program. He has a program. They do some amazing things. Yes, this team reported back on August 9th, expecting a season on that day. They're staying at the Sheraton Palo Alto. They've been doing their drills. You know what? They can't pass to a third player. It's all back and forth. But you know what? They're going to build a lot of chemistry that way. And a phenomenal team, returning so many great players, not the least of which is Katarina Macario, two-time Hermann Trophy winner. And this is one where they may really be hurt by the spring season, because usually the NWSL draft takes place in January. She's going to be going number 1 overall, and I don't even think there's any question about it. She is by far the best player that college has seen in a long time, and we're going back. She's the best player in Stanford history. She passed both Kristen Press and Kelly O'Hara in goals last year in the playoffs. These are some phenomenal players, some huge names. She is the best player in Stanford history. I believe best player in college sports. She's going to be going on to the NWSL next year. And they returned 64% of their goals from last year. It took a hit because Sophia Smith left early for the NWSL. Carly Malatsky, who scored a lot in her senior season, graduated. But they were still returning 64% of their goals. They scored 100. They scored 102 goals last year. An absurd number. It's just absurd. And now they're returning all of that production, 72% of their assists as well. Their back line, besides Sam Hyatt, who they lost to the NWSL with the OL Reign, is nearly all returning. And Katie Meyer, for all that she did at the end of the year, was still competing for a job all season long. Paul Ratcliffe had her competing with the senior Lauren Rood. This is a program that takes everything so seriously. She finally won at the end of the year. And they're going to have multiple players drafted. Kiki Pickett, I just love Kiki Pickett. What she can do on the field is nothing short of brilliance. She's amazing. If you haven't followed Kiki Pickett, please go do that right now. And then we have players like Naomi Girma, who is a captain in her sophomore season. Just a really well-rounded team. I can't say much more about them than that. I'll throw it over to you, women's volleyball, but then I want to get back and talk all about men's soccer.
Well, it's hard for me to argue that Katarina Macario is not the best player in all of college sports. She is unbelievable. Folks, please watch her if they're in the spring season. And if there's not, then you're going to be watching her on TV later on, because she is unbelievable. And, one of the most talented athletes in Stanford history. And that is obviously saying something. when Stanford can compete with entire countries in Olympic medals. But in terms of best team, I will raise you the Stanford women's volleyball team, who has won 3 of the last 4 national championships, including last season, where they swept through the Elite Eight, Final Four, and national championship game. It was unbelievable. But unlike women's soccer, they're not returning a lot of that production. We're looking at a team that's really only returning a handful of significant players, Holly Campbell in the middle and Megan McClure, one of the only seniors on this year's team. I mean, they're going to have, I feel like, huge leadership void that was caused by the absence of now Catherine Plummer, multiple-time National Player of the Year, Morgan Hintz, the best libero in the country, Jenna Gray, the best setter in the country, Adriana Fitzmaurice, a fantastic opposite. Basically, the core of the team is gone. I believe in Megan McClure and Holly Campbell to be able to keep that same energy alive, and I certainly believe in Kevin Hambley as well and the culture he's built. But this is going to be a team that relies on a whole lot of new faces. And I think McClure is going to be a big hitter on the outside. I think joining her on the outside will be Kendall Kipp, who I think has the most superstar potential on this team. She showed some flashes of brilliance last year. I think what she would have been in the running for National Freshman of the Year had she not gotten hurt later in the season. She's going to be one of the best players in college volleyball. I expect that she's going to have a first-team All-American level season. And then you're also going to see some of the other members of the heralded 2019 recruiting class, like Katie Baird, step up. I think if you have Baird, McClure, and Kipp on the outsides, that's a pretty good combo. And one of the top recruits in this incoming class, Elena Ogilvie from Hawaii, was a first-team All-American libero. And I think nobody's going to be Morgan Hintz, but I think that she is capable of filling Morgan Hintz's very large shoes. And I think if that happens, Stanford's going to be right there again. A way too early top 25 ranking from NCAA.com had Stanford number 2, knowing nothing other than it's Stanford, and they're always good. And they have dominated the sport for the last few seasons. I'm not sure I'm willing to say they're number 2 right now, but it would not surprise me at all to see Stanford be able to pull off a three-peat, simply because you're taking some veteran experience with McClure and Campbell, and then you're putting that with a bunch of young talent that really is going to fit Kevin Hambley's mold for the program. I would expect to see another deep NCAA tournament run from them as well. And we'll see if women's soccer, women's volleyball can, who gets the nod in their sort of unofficial race for the best Stanford program.
Yeah, we're on Pac-12. We're on this thing together. Pac-12 put out a graphic the other day about all the national championships the conference won last year. All 3 were won by Stanford. Just to put that out there. And I'm going to throw it over to men's soccer right now. And another brilliant team who just seems to find a way in the playoffs. They practice PKs. They must have been practicing since they were 2, because they do not lose PKs. I think the last time they lost in PKs was 2003. They've won 3 national championships since then, and they've all come in the last 5 years. And this is a team that's going to make another run again this year. I really do expect that. They're returning Andrew Thomas, who's an amazing goalkeeper. We saw what he can do, just absurd. Logan Poncho is a really veteran experience, plays outside back, and just really love what he can do. And then Seni Buddha, who was a freshman last year, budding superstar, honestly. A team that's returning 75% of their goals, a lot less of their assists just because of Derek Waldeck leaving. But really quality team. Love what Jeremy Gunn does. Not always the prettiest soccer. Never the prettiest soccer, I'd rather say. But when they get down into the playoffs, they do not lose. And I think that is just something it's an absurd quality that they have. Really, really impressive.
Quickly, what's your over-under for combined national championships between these 3 sports? We're going to leave football out because that would be a ridiculous conversation.
1. I think 1. I just because women's volleyball is losing those elite 4 players. I don't know. I trust you that they're going to get back to that elite stage, but I haven't seen it yet.
I agree with that. I think I'm going to go 1.5. And the optimistic side, catch me on a good day, I'll say 2. On a bad day, I'll say 1. But anyway, this has been another edition of Cardinal Dash. Follow dashsports.tv on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We got a lot of great shows coming out, and the regular schedule is getting loaded up now. So please go out and follow all of our coverage. Listen, the Pac-12 doesn't always get as much attention in the news media as it should. It's East Coast bias, but out here we're trying to give you the best coverage for the team you love. And here at Stanford Dash, in the Cardinal Dash, we want to take it to football and many other sports as well to highlight all the great things about the Stanford Athletic Department. So for King Jimison, I'm King Jimison with Daniel Martinez Crams. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week.